Okay, so what I have for you today is a pretty good example of exactly what to look for whenever you pull off a 5.4 liter 2-valve intake. Doesn't matter what model, doesn't matter what year. If you're pulling it off for intake gaskets, the coolant pipe underneath it, you're doing cylinder heads, you just want to look at it. When you pull it off, you want to inspect these few items. Okay, whenever you have this intake off of the vehicle for whatever reason, you're doing intake gaskets for lean codes, you're doing the coolant pipe underneath the intake, you want to inspect the front area up here where the coolant crossover, which is cast aluminum, meets the plastic intake down here. No matter if you're having coolant leak issues or not, you want to inspect it. This one was not experiencing coolant leak issues as of yet. Now the way this works on here is this coolant crossover bolts to the intake from the bottom. As you can see right here is 1, 2, 3 bolt holes on each side. And that is why I say check for cracks and replace the gaskets on there whenever this intake is off of there, because as you probably already know, pulling this intake is quite a chore. So let's take it off, take those bolts out, and I'm going to show you what to inspect in here, what's common, so you know if you need to buy an intake or you just need to buy some new seals. Now once you have all 6 bolts out from the underside there unbolted, you want to just lift off the coolant crossover and make it stuck a little bit from the gaskets or whatever over time. What you want to inspect though is right in this area, the plastic part of the intake that sticks out and mates to that coolant crossover. Now all this crust in here and everything, this is all perfectly normal. I see this all the time. It's from the aluminum crossover there, just over time, corrosion, stuff like that. Nothing to be worried about. What you want to do is change these gaskets each time you pull one of these intakes off. Not only do you want to do that, but you also want to inspect the channel in here very thoroughly, especially back in this area right here. People see a lot of cracks right in this area right here, leaks coolant, and then it floods the ignition coil wells and it causes Class A misfires. On this side, I have a classic example of that. Actually, it's pretty bad actually. This one was not leaking coolant just yet, but I saw from the bottom side here that it was cracked on there. So I pulled the crossover off and I inspected it, and this chunk came off of there with very minimal effort. This whole thing was separated. You can see it right here, it got all separated in there. And that's from all the heat cycles over the years. It starts cracking in there as the coolant goes through there. So as you can see, let me get a little closer here. There we go. The rest of the gasket seems intact, has a nice straight edge on it. Once you get over here, you can see how it gets all squished out in there, and that's from the pressure of the coolant going through there, and the clamping pressure coming down on it. It has nowhere to hold it into place now. There's no wall over here, so it starts squishing out like that, and that's where you can also start getting the leaks. Not only there, but if this is cracking and separating, there's going to be cracks elsewhere in this area also. That's going to start seeping coolant. Usually it starts seeping coolant more than anything. It won't be like a mad rush and it's just pouring all over the ground. But it'll seep out and it'll cause problems in the worst way. Like I said, it'll get into your ignition wells and it'll cause Class A misfires. Now this I would not repair in any way besides a new intake. There are options out there. There's Dorman intakes for like $169 for this particular model, the 2-valve 5.4. But a lot of people say the way it seals on the underside here and the intake runners, the plastic on there is not as thick, so they're quite a bit louder when you're driving down the road. So that's something to think about. Otherwise, there was some leak issues with those also. So what I'm doing on this one is we're replacing it with a Ford unit, but we're buying it online at Amazon. So this one's about $375, I believe, instead of $505 from the dealer. It's that much cheaper on Amazon, I'm telling you. So I'll link down below for this intake. This intake is used on a lot of different models. So just check the fitment guide, but otherwise I would say order from Amazon from the links provided below on here. You can save a lot of money, and then you can have a genuine Ford intake on there that will last the rest of the life of the vehicle. And this is how they come. They're pretty complete. You can see the inlay gaskets already in there for the throttle body adapter. We have the coolant crossover bolted up in place, gaskets in place.
The sound deadeners down below already. So the only thing you're going to need extra, now that we're changing an intake on here that they weren't counting on before, is O-rings for the injectors. There's 2 O-rings per injector, so we're going to need 16 total, and I'll link to those down below also so you can get those coming and change those out.